Hi guys, welcome to another episode of Renewed Minds. I'm so delighted and pleased to welcome James onto the show today from Break the Chain. How are you doing today, James?
I'm good, thank you. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, fantastic. It was a bit of a tussle with the time differences and everything. How's it going where you are now?
Going well. It's 7:45 p.m. here now, and that's partly down to my organisational skills, which are piss poor, so I apologise.
That's all right. Anyway, just to briefly introduce James onto the show, I'll say he's the founder of Break the Chains, which is a not-for-profit organisation. And what his organisation does is help people break bad habits, mainly focusing on addictions, mental health, suicide awareness. And with James's story and background as well, I just thought it would be a fantastic collaboration to have with Renewed Minds, to have some impact and knowledge of his experiences and what he's been through as well, to be able to give people education on these sensitive topics that some people might not even want to talk about, especially men. So I don't know if you want to add a bit more to that about your background, James, for our audience today, and your story, just what basically brought you here on this journey. Cheers.
Yeah, I can do a sort of condensed story. So I guess the highlights or the lowlights of my story are things I like to kind of touch on are I was bullied quite a bit when I was younger, and I had a lot of insecurities. I think that's what led me into trying drugs for the first time. I'd always wanted to belong to a group of people, and when I met a group of friends when I went to secondary school, they kind of accepted me in a kind of messed up and abusive way, in a way that, I don't know, like young lads kind of tend to be quite violent and or hitting each other and that kind of scene, and encouraging each other to do stupid things. And the funny thing was that I was totally shit scared of Class A drugs and chemicals and stuff. My mom had told me that if I tried them, I would probably die, and I kind of believed that. I believed it.
Just as parents say, don't join bad gangs, don't do no drugs.
So I got to a point when I was 17. I've been smoking weed for, I don't know, since I was like 12, which is, I don't know if that's normal, but I'd watched Dude, Where's My Car and all those other stoner movies, and I thought it looked like fun. But moving to class age from that, that wasn't something that was I had on the cards, because I like skating, I like doing all these other things, and I really felt like I enjoyed all these activities that I did and stuff. I didn't realise how much drugs would get in the way of, just every aspect of your life. But when they all decided they were going to do that, to me, the decision was either you do what they do, or you're going to have no friends. You're going to be abandoned and on your or totally rejected and on your own again. And it was like, well, I've got to do what they're doing, and I tried it.
Peer pressure, isn't it? Yeah, it's peer pressure.
Yeah, and it's peer pressure and my fear of, being rejected and being alone and having no friends, which is for anybody, it's a very painful experience, unless you're an incredibly spiritually strong person. And I definitely wasn't. And so I got into this, and obviously, like, drugs are drugs. They feel good. It's what they do. I got it. I didn't realize, they say the chains of addiction are too light to be felt until they're too heavy to be broken, and that was the case. And we started doing all these big illegal raves and stuff. Just ended up getting into this really, really naughty scene. Breaking into the
all those raves doing these. Yeah, that used to go on in the UK. Yeah, you name it.
And it was madness. It was, all I can say, it was very exciting. The highs were very high. And
Did you ever hear about the warehouse projects that used to go on in Manchester?
Yeah, I've heard about that. Yeah.
Okay, yeah. Well, it's not been based in Lincoln.
Yeah. Was it in Lincoln? Yeah, I definitely have heard of that. Probably I've been to it. I don't know. I can't remember. It's all a bit of a blur, to be honest. It's kind of like going to a rave every single. I mean, it was kind of like it never stopped in the end. Like, this addiction never stopped. Like, it would be like, you start using drugs and it's good, and then all of a sudden they're really expensive and you can't afford it, and you're 17 on an apprentice wage, and then you start selling it because you realise it's free if you sell it, and then you start realising you get money, so you start selling a lot of it. I got caught, nearly went my mum had to take me to Crown Court when I was 18, nearly went to prison, passed out, did too much Valium, passed out, crashed my car into the back of someone. It was just absolutely ridiculous, but it got to the point where I was just, I had no control over my life. My body started falling to pieces. At 19, I felt like I was 90. I could feel all my joints moving. I could feel my hips in the sockets. And yeah, it really messes up your bladder. Ketamine is what I was addicted to. So anesthetic, famously known for tranquilizing horses. I was into all the drugs, but that's what I got addicted to, which is some real heavy stuff. And I wanted, every day I'd be thinking, like, why do I keep doing this? I actually want to stop doing this. Apart from when all your mates are around and the noise is really loud, you kind of forget about the fact that you can't stop. But like most days, you're just thinking, like, why do I keep doing this? I can't stop doing this. And you really,
addiction,
having a shit time. Really start having a shit time with it, and you start getting in debt. All your relationships have gone completely tits up. Family, just like, what the hell's going on?
It affects everything.
I'm really skimming over this stuff, but it really is shit. With really, really fun little snippets in, now and then on the line, but the general vibe of the whole thing is just like really drama, not good. Even though you forget about the fact that 99% of the time it's not cool. And I guess the big thing that happened was when I was 23, my best friend committed suicide. I had kind of two best friends in the world, and this guy was like my rock. He was just, I can't describe what he meant to me. And, like when I needed comfort, he was the person I went to just for his presence, to be around him. His presence was phenomenal. And he took his life, and I didn't know anything about him being depressed. And I was around him all the time.
You didn't know anything whatsoever, like no signs of depression or anything like that.
Now, loads of signs, and I know now what that looks like. But then, in this totally spaced out state, I didn't have a clue. So that had a big impact on me. Excuse me. So I decided to just get out of there, basically. I had help from a friend. My friend Leo, he helped me get a passport and helped me get a visa and just put me on a plane and sent me to Australia, basically. So I, after about a month of trying to drink myself to death, I realised it was never going to do what drugs did. So I kind of laid off it after that. So I started getting into like trying to figure out how to get sober, because I couldn't even say I wanted to quit. So I was there for 10 months and I was just an anxious wreck. And then I went back to the UK, and I kind of managed to moderate a little bit, but then that moderation just slipped. It starts off with, a little bit, and then within a couple of weeks, you just end up back where you was again. And this is just a pattern of addiction.
It's just a cycle.
Trying to moderate is just like impossible. And that's just like, I speak to addicts all the time, and if you've had a serious addiction, you pretty much can never learn to moderate again without it slipping back down that steep slope. So I went back to the UK, stuffed it up again, and then I went back, to Australia, and I really started having to try and figure out how the hell to actually get sober. And after kind of 6 years of just trying to just on my own, trying to figure it out, I started actually looking into how to do that. And then I started a spiritual process called Bhakti Yoga, which was just after I started doing that was the first time, and I guess it may have been 7 years I've been trying to get sober, and I've been sober more or less for 6 years, and I'd never had a moment's peace where my mind was saying, like leaving me alone, basically. It was just scratching the inside of my mind out, saying get some drugs, like every single day, even though I was sober. And I started doing this spiritual process, and that just went quiet. It just went quiet. It was absolutely phenomenal, and it also started having this real powerful transformational effect on my whole life, just my character. And then I started Break the Chain.
Yeah. And I think for me, James, what I find what most inspiring about your story is how far you've come. Like, there's so many people in this world that go through what you've went through. And I do just think it's absolutely an amazing story, how far you've come to starting this journey and your process, and even to start and Break the Chain. It's an inspiring story, mate. Like, and even for people to know that, look, you can turn your life around. And if you go through certain addictions, people might think they can't break free from it. Just like you said, you were hearing like voices in your head. And, I just think it's great to convey to people that you can change things. And this is one of the reasons why I wanted to come on the show, because it's in line with having a renewed mind and having a purpose to come out of certain addictions and make a meaning and a purpose of your life. So on that point, I'd just like us to even start off from that and what your exact journey was from coming to Break the Chain in terms of breaking the shackles of the mind. So what was your journey that took you through that process in terms of breaking bad habits and gaining some self-control, and also, like you said, the drug addictions and that?
It was a gradual process of trying to improve, over time. I couldn't just say no to drugs. Like, it was, for me, that was impossible. I couldn't do that. And everyone says
that's why they have these rehab programs, don't they? Even famous celebrities go for them and stuff. So it's not like it's an easy process.
I'm not saying that it's impossible to do that, because people do it that way, where they just say no one day. For me, I had to get a little bit of space from it. And even though I got space from it, until I got into recovery, nothing changed. And every time I would go home or back to the area I'm from, I would do the same thing. The cycle would repeat. And I needed to completely change my life and the way that I saw the world. I started learning. I started reading, self-help books. And then I obviously started my spiritual process, which is, as I say, it's called Bhakti Yoga. And it's, fundamentally, it's based on the teachings of the Bhagavad Gita and the Vedas, which means knowledge and the knowledge of India. But what they teach and what Lord Chaitanya teaches is fundamentally the same process as what Jesus teaches. It's non-different. It's just serving God, basically, and handing over your life to God. And then when I did that, and I actually started looking into the 12-step program, and like Narcotics Anonymous and Alcoholics Anonymous, AA and NA, the process is actually exactly the same. It's about handing over that problem to a higher power. And then it goes through a kind of a process of looking at what you've done in your life, changing who you are, making amends, kind of like, making up for the things that you've done in the past, and then living a life of service. And the root of the problem for me with all of my problems was that I was totally self-centered, which is interesting because you talk about narcissism quite a lot. I know you're going to ask me some questions about that, but the reality of my problem is that my concerns started and ended with myself, and they took other people into account based on my perception. Because obviously we have a problem where we all see ourselves as the center of the universe, because that's the perspective that we have. So I went through a very interesting transformation of moving myself out of the center of the universe, I guess.
Create your own reality. But in terms of still that spiritual aspect, I think it's a great point that you made, because it's ultimately about having that connection to God. Because some of these things that people go through, even narcissistic abuse, having that self-awareness as well, and the ability to self-reflect as well. Because at the end of the day, we all have like some form of narcissistic traits. But I believe everything's on a scale. And obviously the extreme end is where obviously you're a narcissist, and the other extreme end is great empathy for people and wanting to do things. And I think also one thing is, once you get some sort of purpose in terms of in your life about adding value to people's lives, it can bring a sense of joy and happiness to you, because it gets to a point where you're thinking, all right, you feel fulfilled all your own goals and things, but what's next? You know, to give yourself some meaning and some, you know, that you contribute into society. And I think it's great also that you're setting up this platform. But in terms of like that spiritual process, did you do any, maybe some of sort of meditations or anything like that that may have helped you?
Yeah, every single day I meditate, and it's there's two different processes of yoga. Yoga means union with spirit, union with the supreme soul. That's the real meaning of yoga, means to be connected with God. A lot of people would promote that it means kind of mind, body, and soul, but that's not what the original teachings of yoga, based on the Bhagavad Gita and the yogic texts, actually say. So, you know, it's actually incredibly identical to what's taught in, you know, Christianity and in Islam. They're both teaching that, you know, fundamentally our purpose is to serve God, and that's our purpose, and, you know, we're part and parcel of God. And that's really what a spiritual life means, because people talk about spirituality like it's, you know, something that they just kind of make up in their mind. But fundamentally, spirit is, God is spirit. And the root of I think the most important fundamental point is that it's the purpose of human life is to figure out who we are. And that's why we're here. And that's the blessing of the human form of life, is that we get to ask, who am I? What am I doing here? And we get to self-realize. And, you know, that was a big problem with my drug addiction. And many of these problems is that I didn't know who I was, and that I was insecure in who I thought that I was. I thought that I was many things in my life, and I was totally wrong. And the thing that I learned that completely changed my perspective on the way that I saw the world is that I learned that I am a spiritual being. I am not a material person. This body is something that I'm wearing, like a t-shirt. And I change these, you know, and at the end of my life, I will leave this one and I will get a new one. And
precisely, James, precisely. And even touching on that point, I love that point that you made, and it's something I've always tried to advise friends too in the past, because this body that we're in is just a container. We have names. You're James, I'm Modupe, but we're spirit beings, and you know, this life is just temporary. And I think, especially in society, like, we focus so much on the materialistic things of life and not, you know, eternity, like what's going to be thereafter. And sometimes I'd have, like, almost in the form of leads arguments, like with certain close friends, where I'd be like, you know, they'd want to be more pragmatic about their life, which is fine. There's no problem with that. But it gets to a certain point in your life where it's like certain questions you can't answer without going to the beyond. Like, why does certain things happen? Why do certain things happen to me? And that particular friend, they actually had a lot of issues in their life that, you know, things would just keep not going the way they wanted it to go. Maybe constantly losing jobs, relationships not working out, and just this negligence for their spiritual life. And my advice at the time was just, you know, until you sort out that part, until you know who you are, because truly they didn't know who they are, you're not going to progress in your life. So that spirit aspect is so important. And I'm so glad you touched on that, because I believe it's absolutely critical to whether you're breaking free from addiction, breaking free from any sort of like abuse and relationships, or even like healing, because the body and the mind, they're all connected. So all these things, I'm so glad you're touching on it, James, because they're so important to having that awareness and knowing that you must renew your mind in order to move forward and progress in every aspect of your life. So it's absolutely critical. Thanks so much for sharing that, James.
When you're a baby, you have a baby's body. And then when you're a toddler, you have a toddler's body.
Yeah.
And then you have a teenage body, an adult body, and then an elderly body.
Yeah.
If you look at a photograph of each one of these bodies, that is quite distinguishably a different body. It's a completely different body. And the interesting thing is, even scientifically, they know that this is a fact. Within 5 years, every single atom and molecule that makes up the human body is actually completely changed. You get a new set of skin once a month. You get a new liver every 6 weeks. And then within a year, you get a completely new set of bones. Every atom and molecule that makes up the bones actually changes. And a lot of people think that they're their brain. But within every 3 days, every molecule that makes up the brain has completely changed, which is absolutely phenomenal. Talk about a renewed mind.
Yeah. Exactly.
Well, it's a renewed brain anyway.
Yeah.
So this thing, it's kind of like looking at a waterfall. If you look at a waterfall, it looks like there's this one thing there that you call a waterfall, but actually this is water running through this constantly. So that's what this body has. This body actually is. So we're something, we're spirit. So it's like people quite often talk about the soul, like you have a soul. It's actually the other way around. It's like you are the soul and you have a body. And this is the problem. This is the problem with drug addiction and materialism and trying to satisfy yourself using material things, is that because we are not material, no amount of material things can ever make us happy. Jesus said that if you can't love the world, you can't serve two masters. If you love the world, you can't have the kingdom of heaven. I'm not exactly sure. I'm not a Christian as such, but I know that the nature of what he's talking about there is saying that the world and the spirit is completely different. And when you try to satisfy yourself, like there's no amount of drugs in the world, money in the world, a partner can never fully satisfy you. Nothing can be fully satisfying. That's why you totally need to find spiritual food, and you need spiritual nourishment to actually find that fulfillment, which can totally satisfy your heart. And it leads on to the next point I'll just talk about quickly, because you mentioned it before. The mind-blowing thing about, so I started Break the Chain before I decided to quit drugs. And my thinking was, if I'm going to share my story, and I'm going to start sharing my journey of me trying to quit, because I don't know how to say I'm never going to do it. I don't know how to say I'm never going to do that again. So I started sharing my story, and people were like so amazed. I was so scared to do this, of the judgment that I would receive. And people were so overwhelmingly nice and inspired by what I did, and people started becoming inspired by me, and I started becoming like a public figure, and I was just mind blown, because I was just like, what have I got to offer? You know, I've never said anything intelligent in my life. And then people presumed that I'd quit, and I realized that I had the power to change people's lives. I've never had, and that was like, talk about having a purpose. I can stop people from committing suicide. I can get people off drugs. I don't even know how I can do that, but somehow I have the power to do that. And once I realized that I had that capability, I felt like I had to quit, and I got the power to quit and say never, ever again. I will never use drugs and alcohol again, because I was helping people. Yeah,
that's amazing and brilliant. And I didn't even know that, like, in terms of like, you hadn't quit yet, when you started it. And I think that is so amazing and inspirational. And it just goes to show, even touching on the points that you said about the spiritual aspects, I love that, like, we're spirit beings. And once you get connected, because for me personally, we have things like, I've always thought this is controversial, like antidepressants. I don't know what your thoughts are on that, but antidepressants, all this. I mean, talk about side effects of drugs. If you don't get to that point where you get connected spiritually to stop those moments of depression and stuff, it's not going to be a smooth road. Let's just put it that way. So it's so important. And I'm glad you had that story to be able to inspire people's life, because it doesn't matter you can be anyone. Like, it's just about tapping into your purpose. You don't need to be like some grand figure to start having impact on people's lives. Just once you get connected to God, to know your purpose, because we're all connected to God. I don't care. I don't care who you are. Like, even if you want to be an atheist, an agnostic, you tell me. And if someone was in the face of death and they didn't like God, if you're real, like, save me right now, you know? So I believe every human being is connected to God. And it's so important, as you mentioned there, James, you know, to get into that mode of having your spiritual life intact so that you can also break free from addictions. And, you know,
it's interesting because I used to be an atheist, and then an agnostic, and then I had a I've had experiences in my life where you know, I've seen beyond doubt, and God is present in my life in a extremely personal way. But you know, I can't show that to people because it is a personal thing, and if you want to be an atheist, you will have the vision to have that experience. So, you know, I think talking to the idea of atheists who, I'm sure that if anybody's listening to this episode, then they've probably turned it off by now if they're atheists. But just speaking to that point is, I think that even like just based on the spiritual knowledge that I have, is that the soul has a nature, and compassion is part of the nature of the soul. So you know, the more in line you get with your eternal nature, the happier and more fulfilled you will be. So, you know, even science agrees that service and helping other people and kindness is actually going to make you incredibly happy. So even if you don't believe in God or have any inclination towards any sort of spiritual life and just think it's bullshit, if you start being nicer to people and more serving, you will start to get free from a lot of bad habits, you know, through that kindness and that compassion. It has an amazingly powerful and transforming effect.
It's a basic law in the universe, and it's something I always say to people, and it's even written in religious, you know, doctrines. Like, once you give, it's something that just happens in the spiritual world. Once you give, and when I say give, doesn't have to be necessarily money. You know, it's a service, like you said. Once you give, like, it will always come back to you. And it's always something I've even mentioned to people, and as something I've heard in the past, even when you network, like, do not network with the purpose to take. Network with the purpose to give. It's very, very important to know that point, because once you network with that purpose, value will automatically come back to you. It's just a basic law in the universe. And yeah, it's absolutely brilliant that you made that point. I'm glad you did. So
I don't know if it's worth mentioning this as well, because this was a really profound experience that I had. I had chronic anxiety. I had been unhappy for 3 years, where I've become almost developed like an eating disorder. I started throwing up my food. I had got into such a desperate place, and this was after I had ticked so many material boxes. I got so desperate. I thought, I'll try everything my parents and teachers told me to do. I'll get the job. I'll work hard. I rented a house out. I had all the rooms rented out. got myself into an incredibly comfortable situation. And I had everything that you could ever want, really. Anything else after that would just be amplified. All my needs were covered. And, you know, I had never felt so empty. I got really desperate, and I ended a relationship, and I left because I was just in such a bad place. And I'd learned about something called karma yoga. And fundamentally, that is where you completely give up the fruits of your actions. So for everything that you do in the world, you don't have anything, like, nothing is for you. So you do good things, and then you want nothing from anything, and you just totally surrender the outcome of everything you do.
Wow.
So I was going around, because karma is fundamentally where you act, and then there's a reaction to it. But karma, you get the karmic reaction when you do things with self-interest. So when you do things selflessly, you don't get this, and it doesn't keep you tied to this repeated birth and death here in the material world. But that's anyway, that's karma yoga. So fundamentally, I just said, right, I'm going to do nice things. And I said, I did this experiment. I was like, for the next month of my life, I'm just going to go and do nice things for people and expect nothing. So I went and just did free things for people for a month. And I think within a week, I had gone from being totally anxious, just a complete wreck, because I was just wanting things, expecting things. And I just said, like, if good or bad, whatever happens, it doesn't matter. Within a week, I had this thing on my face and my cheeks were like heading for the ceiling, you know, like I had this big smile on my face, and I was like, what is this? I hadn't smiled like that for, like, I don't know, since I was a kid, and I just couldn't even stop smiling. And it's just like, it was amazing. It was just unbelievable. And it showed me something.
Yeah, it's definitely go on.
It showed me something, you know, like the more you give, the more you get. And, you know, I didn't even want anything, and I was just profoundly happy.
And it's totally, and I think, honestly, mate, and that's like a problem in our society today. Like, it's just promoted just selfishness, basically, and, you know, just self-centeredness, and, you know, everything's all about me too, you know, and everything, and, you know, all these kind of things that are just going on in society. And I think once people start learning to give again, love again, bringing back values into society, society would be a much better place, honestly. It really would. And on that point of the narcissism, I'd just like to know a bit more about, I know we talked about it off camera, but I'd just like to know a bit more about your experience with having that self-reflection, and also knowing that you were in a narcissistic, abusive relationship, and how you able to see the signs and also come out of that.
Yeah, so this is something that I actually realized that I'd been through much later on, like at the time. So when I was about 18, I was in a relationship with someone that I had always wanted to be with, and the whole thing was, you know, I'll get to that point after. Okay, so I'll just the sorts of things that I had to deal with. Bearing in mind, I guess I don't talk about this very often. I am still friends with this person, believe it or not, and you know, I wouldn't want to say anything bad about the person personally, but I'll just explain what I went through. Sure. So, you know, there was violence. I was getting hit in the face. I had my head slammed in a door. I had every panel on my car scratched. I had my phone taken off me constantly, and I had to walk home in the winter in England from places, constant thing. Like, it was just constant, sexually put down, criticized, just everything, you know, just belittled.
Abuse,
like, everything was just it was pure abuse. And I think that I didn't recognize that this was problematic or abnormal, because it was my first relationship, proper relationship. Everything else that I've been kind of just trivial, you know, school stuff. This was like the first proper one. I was so invested in it. I wanted it so bad. And, you know, and I think I was just prepared to put up with anything. And the thing that I think I found interesting is,
especially if being a man as well, we touched on that point off camera.
Being a man, I think that you don't feel like you can be abused by a woman. It doesn't even register as a possibility. It just doesn't, because it's just like that. I don't know.
I remember someone even touched on a point, like, on one of the previous episodes, and don't you call the police? I mean, I love that point, because they can't believe you and they won't believe you. You know, if you're getting abused by a woman, it's just, come on.
Oh, if I
man up or something, man up.
If I called the police on her, I'm the one that would have got arrested. I know that, because she is just a fantastic manipulator. So, you know, I am aware that narcissism is actually a disorder, and it's something that we throw around so casually. People everyone's a psychiatrist, and branding, you know, labeling people as psychiatrists, you know, and I think it's possible that she might have been awarded that one if she'd been, but I don't actually know. But anyway, incredibly self-centered and incredibly abusive. I later on found out what she was likely to have experienced at home based on something I found out, and it totally made sense. So I have, you know, I still care about this person, and I actually have a great deal of sympathy towards what the reason why she was likely like that. But anyway,
Yeah.
but I just think one thing that's really interesting is why was I in that relationship, and why did I put up with that?
Yeah.
You know, the whole thing for me was so much about status and a superficial level. She was, you know, good looking, and you know, she'd been the popular girl at school, and I was actually seeing this relationship as a sign of status and almost protection as well, because I knew that she had like a kind of a social high social status, and you know, popularity, and there were so many shallow and selfish things tied into this thing of me being with this person and putting up with this stuff. So it was kind of like, yeah, I wasn't being abusive in that way, but it was actually my self-focus that was actually putting me in that situation in the first place. And I guess it was like a kind of a codependency. I was dependent on that status and that protection, and having those desires met myself as well. So I don't, you know, if I'd had any sense about me, I would have not been anywhere near that. I would have left, and not that that was very easy, because when I did try and leave, you know, she was cheating on me with all my friends and all sorts of stuff, but still, like, when I tried to leave, she would threaten to kill herself. So it was like, and you know, it was kind of hard to get away from that one. But it was super interesting because, like, you know, it's really easy to talk about people being narcissists. And once I got a lot more self-awareness when I was, you know, in my late 20s, I started, you know, learning about what gaslighting was and stuff like that. And, you know, I was someone who was really committed to being honest. And I got into a relationship, and I started, you know, it started to get really uncomfortable, and she suffered with, you know, jealousy and paranoia a little bit. And it got to the point where she would ask me what I'm thinking and stuff like that, constantly, stuff like that. But I, you know, in the beginning I was honest, and in the end I just could not help but tell lies, because I couldn't deal with the emotional reaction and the pain that it would cause that we'd both be in. So I'd just be like, what are you thinking about? And I would lie. And I couldn't believe that and I realized fundamentally what I was doing was gaslighting her. I was actually, something was actually happening, and I couldn't deal with the pain. So I actually told lies to avoid an emotionally uncomfortable situation. And I could not believe that this was something that I was capable of doing. And I think that if we're all honest, we all tell lies to get situations to go our way, even if they're small lies, you know.
The white lie,
And I started seeing so much selfish behavior in myself, you know. Like, it's just like the amount of layers of this that I've been peeling back over the years. And every time I peel one layer back, I just find this new thing underneath where it's like, oh my God, I can't believe you do this. And, you know, like, you know, it's not about you, and like, or like trying to get attention in some way, or, you know, just the way the ego creeps in and just tries to make it about us. And, you know,
exactly.
I think we've all got these,
we've all, and
it's a spectrum,
and I like the way you put that. It's not just about saying, oh, this person's a narcissist and stuff like that, but you have that self-reflection as well. Like, you know, it's always a continuous journey. As I said, everything's on a scale. It's never like, you know, black and white. It's a continuous journey, and constantly having that self-reflection to always have like self-improvement to ultimately become the ultimate empath, if you want to put it that way. And just know that, you know, nobody's perfect. We all have our weaknesses. You do, I do. And, you know, just having to always self-improve. And I think that's what it's all about, basically. There's no saints. There's no, you know, thingy, you know, perfect person, if you want to put it that way. And I'm glad you touched on that point, because that's something that sometimes a lot of people don't touch on, even when they're getting abused, but also having a self-reflection of what their contribution was in the relationship, because that, I believe, you need to do that to have an ultimate recovery from the relationship as well. and, you know, to know what you need to do to self-improve. And that will obviously go into every aspect of your relationship life, whether it's work, you know, anything. So yeah, thank you so much for touching on that point, James. So on a final note, James, just to close off, what, from your perspective, your journey or your experiences in a nutshell, and obviously with your platform as well, breaking the chain, what would you say people can do? And also, obviously, I'll put a link as well if there's anything you want to like suggest as well that they can maybe follow to help them, you know, heal from addictions, bad habits, in regards to that. Yeah. So if you can just touch on that, James.
I think the most important thing is that we need to know who we are. And if we know who we are and we are secure in ourselves, we are way less likely to become addicted to drugs. We are way less likely to get into abusive relationships. I'd just like to say, I have so much sympathy for anybody who is in an abusive relationship. It's incredibly difficult. They're all different, and sometimes they are just extremely difficult situations. And if you're in one of those situations, just hang in there. And I really feel for you. And I know slightly how difficult that can be. So I'm not trying to minimize anybody's circumstances and situations, but I'm just telling you kind of like my situation. And I honestly believe that, like once you're in it, it's very difficult, but being secure in yourself is a way that to prevent getting into all varieties of difficulties in this world. What can people do? Be curious, keep learning, and I followed podcasts and then started reading books, and then ultimately, that started giving me some theoretical knowledge. But it wasn't until I actually went out into the world, I had to change who I was, and then actually started trying to help other people as well. And that just had the most wonderful impact on my life. If you feel inclined to go a little bit deeper, an amazing thing to check out is my dear friend Acharyadas's website. We can put that in the notes. It's ACHARYADAS, acharyadas.com. I'll give you the link for that one.
Yeah.
If you go to that website, and there's a yellow button on that website, and it says, wondering where to start here. And then he's got some videos about who are you, what is my position, where do I fit into this whole thing, what's my function, and that will open your eyes just to like big time. So that's a cool thing to do. If you want to check out what we do, at Break the Chain World Mission on Instagram. Probably, I think it's the same on Facebook, but I'll give you the links for those things as well. I have a podcast and I interview all kinds of different
I'll put it down
about
in the video as well.
all varieties of different things. Just be curious and just try and be a good person, whatever that means to you, whatever you can do in whatever way. Just try your best.
That's difficult for some people to do in highly stressful cities in the world, but when people are usually not nice anyway. But yes, are there any specific programs, just like you said, of Break the Chains that you're doing at the moment for people? Do they have a certain name or?
At the moment, so our programs and stuff, I've actually closed them down at the moment because I've actually started studying as a counsellor at university. I'm in New Zealand, and part of the way I'm going to stay here and get my residency is through working as a counsellor. That took up a phenomenal amount of my time. We've been building a platform for the past year, which is going to be an online resource centre and kind of place to hang out and come and just feel better and find information, tools, and people to meet and listen to change the direction of your life. And take it as far as you want, really. And that's I'm not exactly sure when that's going to be finished. It's going to be an online platform, and it's going to be pretty cool. But within the next year, that will be ready.
That's brilliant, James, and I'm so proud of you for doing that. You're doing great things. Seriously, where you've come, your journey. Keep doing what you're doing. I'm sure like in future, we're going to have collaborations. I hope you are going to want to come on the channel in future as well. I'll be pleased to welcome you.
Absolutely, thanks. Thanks so much for inviting me on. I've never spoke about that narcissism stuff before. I've realised it and spoke about it kind of privately, but I guess I wouldn't speak about it on my podcast because I think that person maybe even listens to my podcast, so it might be a little bit touchy.
Yeah, exactly. So I appreciate you for touching on that. So thank you so much for coming on the show. Hi guys, I hope we enjoyed that episode with James. I think it had a lot of depth, and I think it's going to be absolutely vital for people that are suffering from different types of addictions, whether it be drug addictions, trauma abuse in relationship, narcissistic relationships, and just generally breaking bad habits, and also having that also spiritual journey and awareness that you're a spirit being and being connected to God and knowing your purpose. That is absolutely crucial to getting through that process of whatever addiction you're going through. And even with therapy, if you need to have that awareness and also be able to thrive at the end of the process. So thank you so much for watching. Keep continuing to like, subscribe and share the channel, hit the notification bell, and let me know if there's any thoughts, any comments that you want to make, and keep watching and subscribing. And thank you very much for listening. Peace out.